This is just not a hands-on demo on coding the exercise. With this hands-on, I'm going to show you a formula on how to code HTML and CSS. A straight up formula where you don't have to mess up your code and then try fixing it up like so many front-end developers do. Instead, go for an outer inner approach where you don't have to fail or fix anything. Everything with so much clarity. Also, this is a CRUD exercise, has all the essential create, read, update, and then delete. Also, there is a menu, parent and the child components, grid, and details. Now we'll also see some issues that we face with different property types, especially with calculations and alignment. Before you start going through this hands-on demo, try to complete this exercise yourself. Give your best. In case you didn't get it right, that's all right. These are your initial days. Everyone makes mistakes. Let's start the hands-on, but kindly understand that I haven't yet completed sessions on grid, flex, position, float, etc. So there are some advanced topic left, but they were planned for future sessions. Now, before we go to that, let's try to complete these exercise with the basic properties that we had, like how we used to do in the initial days. Like modern developers will always use grid and flex to solve the problem. But if you didn't challenge yourself using these basic properties, you wouldn't understand the challenges that you will face as a front-end developer. These challenges are what will help you while working on a complex front-end project and in edge cases. The grid and the flex makes the job pretty easy. So let's not use those in this exercise and start challenging yourself. Now let's code. So this is what we try to achieve. So already created a folder. This is a folder HTML-CSS, all in lowercase, and two different words have to be separated with hyphen. Now this is all in lowercase, but for some purpose Visual Studio Code tries to show this in uppercase, but the other folders inside will all be in lowercase. Now let me have a index.html and a new folder. The folder could be styles. Styles should be fine, because we're not sure how many style file we will have. I'm going to create a styles.css. Let me keep looking on this page so that I know what needs to be done. But I actually gave you an image, right? I believe I gave you an image or a page. So whatever could happen. So whenever a product owner or the design team comes to you, they might come with a web page, or even a web page might have like low details, but they might even come with an image. So it's up to you to just scope up and try to complete the code. Now let's begin here. I'm going to start with link rel style sheet. I'm not going to use this HTML skeleton, because that's what we saw in the Google styling guide. That's not necessary. It's optional. Closing tag is a very good practice. Now I'm going to start with a div. I'm not going to have a body, because body obviously takes 100% width and width. So it's always the same. Try to open this page now. Okay, so the best way to code HTML and CSS is what I'm gonna teach you now. Now, every programming language or every markup language or languages like HTML, you should follow a pattern. You should try to understand what is the best way to approach this code. Now, you could either just do a div, just try to accomplish this, and then have these and this and this. But the best way to approach is go outer and then inner approach. I'll show you what that outer inner approach is. I'm going to name this class as main. I'm going to have another div which I'll call entity selection panel. Remember, we have to use lowercase with hyphens. So entity selection panel is what I'm going to say. I'm going to call this entity selection panel. Okay, so this right, this is what is main. So it's best to first complete the main and then go for the next item. So to complete this main, the best thing you have to do is you have to give it a border. Let's give this a border. Only when you give border, you would be able to know its scope, its space, or its real estate. Okay, let's see what happens here. Now just gave border, but there's no content. You remember the height of a div is pretty much based on the content. Since there is no content, there's no height, so that is why the top border and the below border has merged. Let me give the height as 10 pixels. So this is 10 pixel, but when there was no height, basically that was height is equal to 0. So those two lines got merged. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to give height 100%. So that's what we saw here, right? This is a border that I'm trying to achieve. Now you don't need borders every time, but since the border is there in the exercise, we're going to accomplish the border here. So we have it here. Now we'll go for the next content. So next is this part, this piece and this piece, right? So there's like left and right. So you have a parent and then you have two child elements directly to it. So let's complete that first. So how will we do that again? I mean, we obviously will use a div now. I'm going to call it entity selection panel to this div, to this area. So let's say, I think this is a middle. I think this is 25%, 25%, 25, 25. So this is 25% and 75% is a width size. So I'm going to say, okay, since this is equally, and they're all, these both are the siblings to main. Let me write both. Let's look at the namings here. So these are all entities, right? Students, faculty, and board members. So that's why I named it as entity. I mean, or if you would come up with a different name, you could try that and even comment it out so that others could also get benefit out of it. And entity selection panel, we just select, this is where you select the entity. So I named it entity selection panel. And right side is entity management panel. You manage those entities. I mean, so you add, you delete and update, you do everything here. So that's why I made it entity selection panel and entity management panel. Now what I'm going to do with these are, again, it's best practice to comment and say that this is a entity selection area. So these are all the properties for entity selection area. It's a good practice. Entity selection panel. And I have a, what is it called? Entity management panel. Okay, so let me give a, now let's say, now this doesn't need a border, right? I mean, well, there's a partition, but it's actually a border. So what we can do is I could give it, just give the border right, because I just need this line. I don't need the left and the top and the bottom. I need the line. So I'm gonna say border right 1px solid black, and then width is 25%. So semicolons, and this space is required. This space is really required. So all that, and you need this to be in very alphabetical order. Entity management panel width is 75%. Done. Let's see what happens. We don't see anything happening here because this entity selection panel and this doesn't has any content to show. I mean, even the borders might have been merged there. So what we could do is try to enter some dummy content over here to just see the scope of it. Okay, but what we see here is, I'm gonna make this left, right. Okay, so there's an issue here. Instead of appearing it on left and right, just one below the other. There's a reason for that. Remember, these two are divs, and divs can only start from the next. So, and div won't allow anything on the right. So what we need to do is we need to say this is inline block. Remember inline block? Here too we need to say this is inline block. Let's see what happens. Still it's not fixed. What do you think could be the reason? Let me try to reduce this a bit. It works now. I think the reason it works now is because 25%, see 100% is the main is 100% height. Okay, that's the height alone. But if you look at its child elements, there are only 2 elements. And this 100, this total need not be this amount. Pretty much this amount is for its parents. Height 100% means main's parent, right? It is relative to that. So it'll take 100% of main's parent, which is the body. So obviously I think if you go and look at it now, even though we didn't mention body, browser knows that the body has to be attached. So that's there. Now let's think of it again. Inside the main, we have these 2 classes. These 2 classes has to be 25% and 75%, which can occupy the whole main. But this has a problem here. Only if I give 75%, 74% it works, because the total is now 99%. But when I give 75%, this breaks up. Maybe that's because we didn't mention box sizing. Remember what happens when we don't mention box sizing? It becomes content box and not border box. What content box does is it occupies 75%. It gives 70% of the width to this panel, and then 25% of this panel. But there's an extra 1 pixel of the border, which is what is pushing here. Let's see. Again, this doesn't work. Now, what could be the culprit here? So we saw that border box should help. Border box should actually make sure that this 1 pixel shouldn't be extra. So this 1 pixel should be part of 25%. I believe what might be a problem is this. Okay, so when I gave font size 0, the contents font size is now 0. So you don't get to see anything. So it's done. So what we could do is I could pretty much say the font size is 16 pixels. 16 should do the trick. Yeah, yeah. So the left is 16 pixel, the right is also 16 pixels. Now I'm again trying to make it alphabetical. Yeah, now it's all in place. You see, it's 25% and 75%. Let's try to disable this. Let's see if that works. No, it doesn't work, right? So you need the border box. Now I'll tell you what happened. For some reason, when you have the inline block, you have like two inline blocks. This is div and this is a div. So browser, what it does is when you have two inline blocks, disable this. When you have two inline blocks, the browser, when you actually have some space in your HTML, a div after the other, now there's no space here. So that is why it is working fine. See, font 0 is something I have disabled. Everything is cool. No, but still it works well. But the moment I take it to the next line, what happens is the browser considers inline block in a way that the space even between these two div in the code is being used. So that space is what collapsed the whole thing. So that is why, I mean, every space is what? Every space or text basically has a font size. Space is also one of a character, right? So when I make it font size is 0, that space is gone. So that's how we tackle it. So these are all kind of nuances and issues that you would see when you code. So you have to understand all this. Okay, so we have fixed the left and right with issues. We have done that. Now let's see what more we can work on this. Again, this can be height 100%. So that we get the border. See, so only when I make this height 100%, I get this border, or else the border just stands still here. Okay, so you have to understand, unless you mention height, the space, the height of the div would be only based on the content. Okay, so we're getting better. And not to bulk sizing. Okay, so now this two is split, right? Now we have to go one level inner. So from the outer main, we came one level inner. Now we have to go the other level inner. So for that, I'm just going to focus on the left side first. Okay. So on the left side, I'll have another div. So this div is for the huge entity selection panel. Now inside that, I'm going to have another div. Okay, I didn't give a class name to this div. We'll call it entity selection inner panel. We will run out of names, but these are all some of the patterns that you can observe. So there's another panel inside this. Now that panel is the one that will hold these three. It's not, I mean, whenever you have a list, always try to group them. So that should be better. Now I'm going to give a border for this. Okay. Let's give a border for that. It's called, no, we don't know. I mean, we just gave div is this div, but we don't know. See, it just stays here. We don't know the real estate of that div. We don't know its space, right? So that's what we're gonna try and look now. So me give some margin to this. Let me take this out. No margin. Okay, let's give the border first. We always need to give border so that we understand where the item actually holds. So now I'm going to say here, padding there or here. Say this is how it looks, right? So entity selection panel is this border. So I'm giving margin so that it gets moved. Now 20 pixels on the top. How does it look? It looks at least 100 pixels, right? Okay, we're trying to group this one now. Align the text to center so that it comes to center. The margin for top 100 pixel, yeah, is fine. For the left and right thing, 50 pixels should be fine. So remember the shorthand, top and bottom, left and right. Okay. So this is the limit of it. You could not give margin and also try to give a width to it. It's always better to give a margin when there's a width. Which means 50% of the container. See, it is trying to be in the 50% on the container, but the margin is what takes a hit now. Let's see what happens. Let's see how we bring this into the middle. Let's take the 50% out. Then have another div called div class entity selection list. We already have a div to group it, so we just need a ordered list. Now the li, I could just say that is an anchor class entity selection. So if you just look at it, I'm not giving names based on its properties. I'm just saying giving it functional names. So the left one that we have is to select entities. Let me give some dummy link. So that it acts like a link. I'm gonna copy this student, faculties, board members. See what happens. So this is how we get. Now the focus is just to fix the left side, not the right side. And I don't believe fix is the right word. I should have said the focus is to keep completing on the left side. So we have inner panel done. Then we can have the entity selection list, which is actually an ordered list. So I'm going to say list style type is none. So the bullets are gone. The bullets are gone. And then I'm going to say margin is 0. Padding is 0. Then we have the entity selection itself, which is a link. So an entity selection, we have like 4 stages, right? 4 stages for the link. So entity selection and entity selection, I mean, basically the default link setup and the links visited state should be same. So just the background. Background is white. So I'm going to give a hexadecimal value, ff, which is white. Border, we have a border, right, for all this. This is a border for the anchor. So let me give a 5 pixel solid. Looks like green, but to be on the safer side, I have this extension. So color picker extension, if you search, get it. So color by Fardos is the extension. So what you could do is once you install the extension in Google Chrome, you could pick color from any sites. So there is something. Oh. Looks like eyedropper is not working on this page. Looks like it doesn't work on a local page. Anyways, I'll for this time being, I mean, if it is actually a web page, you could just go and find the color that's always there. But if not, you could try using these extensions. So let me try. I believe this should be somewhere closer. And the color of the text is also same, right? The border and the color, it's the same. Again, the displays should be inline block. For the anchor tag, if it has to react like this. Let's see what happens here. Okay. So all horizontally aligned. Since it is a text, I'm going to give text decoration is none. It should be all separate list items, right? So this should work now. Now I believe we got the buttons right. Student faculties and okay, but the spacing seems to be huge. So what I'm going to do is I've given margin as 20 pixels. So which means this is the item space outside that. So looks like this margin is huge. So I'm going to rather give 10 pixel. I believe we almost got it close. I mean, it looks as ugly as it could be. But then again, we have to take this border out. So, the purpose of the border was different. So I'm gonna round this a bit. So what this thing that we are seeing here is, so the thing we are seeing here is this is a selected button. That is why it's oval in shape. So all we need to do is work on the border. Okay, before that, I think we have to have for hover. And active. I think for hover and active, it's going to be the same. Because I haven't seen, I mean, we just got the wireframe and we have no idea how it's gonna change. So a little bit of dark green, let me add this here. So that it's too dark green. Okay. And then we have to add the border radius. So one cool feature about classes is you could add two classes to one element. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a selected entity class. Now all it does is border radius 30 pixels should be fine. So selected entity, right? What happens is this CSS properties are applied and then this CSS properties are applied. So when this CSS properties are applied, all the color, everything comes in, even the border is being applied, and then the border radius 30 pixel is applied. Let's see what happens. So this is how it looks. Now, I think we need to change the font. We have to look for some font here. Okay, let me take out that ugly border. It's gone. So looking at the spacing, the fonts, I think these fonts could be Vertana. So fonts pretty much you can get it from your product owner team, or if it's something like an image, obviously you can't inspect it. So you have to decide on the fonts yourself. All those were capitalized. So let me give a font. I could give it here. got it. Close. I think the selected color is also dark. So maybe it's not getting applied because since it is visited, it's taking this color. In that case, what we should do is take this out. See what happens then. Now it works. Okay, so we got the rounded radius. We got the faculties too, but looks like I need to increase the height a bit through padding. So give an 18 pixel. I think this should be right. Okay, then we are done with the left side. The right alone, we have to start working now. Okay, let's clear up some of the empty space. Now we are on the right side. Right side will go from the outer inner approach again. So I'm looking at the entity management panel. I'm gonna give a heading to it. Let's call it entity management. Then we have two items here, entity list and the entity details. For that too, I'll give a name. So we need something for the entity list. So we have like two items here, right? We should have an entity list panel. So entity list panel is this area, and then entity list or entity details should be the bottom area. So we'll have that too. First, let's try to achieve this. Inside that, I'm going to have a entity list. Entity list is this list, this whole list. That should have a group div. before that, we're forgetting something here. Entity management panel, we have seen the border, which is basically the left side's border. We'll have an entity list panel, and we'll say entity list panel has border 1px solid black. Oops. Okay. Just go somewhere. Let me give margin of 50 pixels. Right and left can be auto. The width should be 95%. So I'm basically giving it for this content entity list panel. Say right. So if you look at this, the width is only this. I'm just making sure the outer panel of this grid is 95%. But why is it at the bottom? Let's try a trick called vertical align. Now it is vertical align now. And I think it is on the right space. It could even go a bit lower. Let me give 60 pixel. Yeah, now this should be right. And then we have the entity list, which is the table itself for the grid. We'll say border 1 pixel. Mostly this border 1 pixel solid black wouldn't be a problem for height, because we are not trying to partition the height, right? Vertical heights, only the width. So since there's no height involved, I didn't give the box sizing. So entity list, I'm trying to see the entity list with the help of border. I'll give it red. So there's no content inside it. So let me move the right to here. So both the borders are the same. It's merging, trying to merging. So this is all cool now. So the entity list is inside. So that's all fine. And then we'll have inside the entity list, which is basically this whole table. We have two things: the header and the actual values. Now we'll look for the header now. What shall we name the header now? Every cell should have a row, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 cells should have a row. Inside row, there can be 4 cells. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have an entity list header row. I hope you are following the outer inner approach. When you try the outer inner approach, there's no way you're going to mess up your code. ID, name, city, then delete. Okay, so these are all the header rows. So we have the header row now. I'm gonna remove the border. Check this page. So this page, all these are in. This is all vertically aligned, not horizontal. The reason is they're all divs, and divs are pretty much block components, and they won't align horizontally. And for that, what we need to do is, for the header row, I'm gonna say header row is pretty much 100%. Yeah, the row this row that I think I messed it up. So inside the row, yeah, I messed it up. So there should be one row which is called entity list header row. Inside one row, there has to be entity list header cell. So there should be a row and then a cell. Just look at those namings. I mean, there's a hierarchy that I followed, which is from the list to the header row to the cells. Yeah. Now, in the style, we have to complete the row section first. So the with row, I say that the width is 100%, and there's no, we have to make sure the margin is 0 and the padding is 0. Sometimes the browser by default gives a few padding, so that becomes difficult. Now, when the header row is done, I could start working on the header cell. So header cell's background color, which could be somewhere on the red, green, and blue. I think it should be similar, some sort of grayish blue. And then I'm gonna give border 1 pixel solid black. And then color is white for the text. Yes. Then what else is there? Could give a font family. Yeah. Let's write Times New Roman. Font size as 16 pixels. Font weight, since it's a header, I think there was bold options. Height of the div. Let's wait for that. Let's see if this really works. And the background is all fine, but I think the most important thing that we missed is display inline block, so that one block can come next to other, but it's not occupying much space. I'm going to give a width 25%. So what happens is 25% is applied on this cell, this cell, this cell, and this cell. So that's totally 100% of the parent. It's there, but still there's a space. Why do we have this space? Any idea? Now we saw in the earlier splitting of these two div, which was basically an inline block, there was a font size applied. So what I'm going to do is, so this space, right? This space and this space, if I try to close this, let me remove this font. Okay. See this, I mean, if you would notice, there was a gap here, it's now gone. But I think the problem is also with the box sizing, because you gave 25%, but every border is going to take 1 pixel. So 25% plus 1 pixel, what happens? 100% plus 4 pixels. So that is why it just came out of the line. See, now it is fixed. But now if I bring these again to the next line, it's spoiled. Because of this gap. This gap is nothing but the font size 0 that we did earlier. Oh, I think we need to do the same for header row. Header row is pretty much this header row. So this is the parent, right? So I think if we fix in the parent, it should be fine. Font size is 0. Yeah, it's fixed now. But I think the height needs to be changed. So let's try the height here. Height as 30 pixel. Yeah, 30 pixel looks fine. Yes, but then these are all not aligned. So we'll say text align is center. Yes, but then from top to bottom is not aligned. Okay, there's something called line height. Lorem ipsum. I'll tell you what line height is. Okay, let's look at these lines. Now height, when you say height, it's the height of the container. Okay, so this is the height from the top to the bottom, that's height. But when you say line height is pretty much like the tip of the L to the tip of the T, or the tip of the N to the tip of the L. So that's the line height. So height and line height, they seem so different. So what happens is, when you make sure that the height and line height is same, the line height which can go to the bottom, it pretty much aligns to this height. So it all comes back to middle. So that's how the line height works. Let's see, we could fix something else here. Okay, there seems to be a problem here. I'm not sure if you could notice that. Well, we'll try to look at that sometime. Okay, so this row is done. This row is neat. So we'll start working on the actual values now. I'm gonna say entity list row. Then we'll have entity list value cell. We had the header cell, now we'll have the list value cell. I'll give like 3 values, 1001, then John Doe, then, let me see, he lives in New York. Finally a button. In fact, it's a very good thing to work on anchor tags than button. But since the example that we saw here had buttons, I'm gonna stick to the buttons because we do what the client asks for, what the product owner asks for. We can't just try to provise. Let's call it delete, because that's what it does. So 1 rows, 4 cells. Give 3 values here. 2, my favorite Tom Hardy. Los Angeles is where he works. 3, Rick Dalton, the imaginary character. Probably he lives in Chicago. Okay, see how that comes. Another ugly grid. Okay, let's start to fix that. Entity list row. Entity list value cell. Yes. We'll see what changes we could do here. Entity list row. Why not we do the same thing here with 100% margin, padding, font size. Yeah, I'm gonna it all here. I mean, it's all the same, right? Other than, I mean, alignment shoot is all the same. Now, within the, let me copy this and make changes to it. Background color. Should be similar. Box sizing is there. Give border. Display in block. Is it white in color? The text is black in color. I think this should work. Okay. There seems to be an issue. There are some spacing here, and you could see like dark lines because we gave border for everything. If you see, this border doesn't look good. See, there is a border on the top, and then this trying to be a border that keeps merging here. So we'll try to fix that. The problem, the border problem first, because we have border for this cell and border for this cell too. So what happens is this border and that border will merge. Okay. So we could fix that. The same is happening in the header too. See, that is why we see these lines. So there's two borders that's actually happening. So what we could do is first I'll try to fix the header border. Now in the header cell, I'm going to say border 1 pixel solid black, but border right width is 0. So what it does is it will apply border for all, but on the right side alone, the border will be 0. So for this cell, the border on the right is 0. But see, but there's a border. So what's happening is there is a border. I think we didn't remove the border for entity list. Yeah, entity list panel we didn't remove. Yes, we don't need that, right? Let's remove that. Yeah, we lost that. See, we didn't need that. We don't need a border on a border. So that's actually bad practice. So I've removed that. So we just need one border. If you see, just see it clearly, there is border applied on top, left, bottom, and then right. But right we gave as border right with 0, but still it's there. It is there because for the next cell, the same CSS is applied. So that applies the top, bottom, left, and right. Again, for this cell is applied. Again, for the last cell, if you see, top, left, bottom applied, right, there is no border at all. So what we do now is there's a pseudo selector called last child. So what it does is, so out of, so this class, right, out of 4 cells, 4 siblings, I am the last child. So for the last child alone, apply this border right. So that's what you see here now. You got the border now. Now there are some spaces around. We need to fix that. We have entity list row. So the header part is done. See, the header part is done. Now the entity list value cell. What we got to do is, I think here everything is fine except the border part. So the border here too, we see there is so much of thickness here, but there's no thickness there. The top is there because this border and that border is merging. The header border and the cell border is merging. So what I would do is, I would just say border top width is 0. because for this the bottom is being applied, for 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 this top this bottom is applied, so bottom and all is applied. So border top with 0, and then let's look at it. The right is still double borders. Okay, this is one is just one, so we will say border right width is also 0. The problem with that is we don't get the border here on the last element. So I'm gonna say again same technique. Last child, so we should get it. Yes, we got it. I'll fix this part. Looks like this and this part doesn't works well because of the button. So we'll try to fix the left part first because we just have text, but there is so much of spacing. So what could go wrong? This is not right semantically. Vertical align is fine. I think the problem is with this layer because when this is not aligned well, that it's trying to de-align all the elements on the left because you're all columns of a single row, right? So I think we should try to fix that first. I don't remember giving a class to this button. So we have this button now. Let me give a class to that button. Delete. Background color can be I think this is closer to maroon. The text color is font family can be Lucida. Font size 14 pixels. Width 70 pixels. Let's see what happens. Now the width is all fine. Let me try to give a height for the button. Height can be 20 pixels. The line height can be 10 pixels. Okay, it is vertically aligned, but I think there is a problem here. So probably for the last child, which has the button too. I mean, we did it for the border, but I think we can try to do a padding of 5 pixels, the top and the bottom. Yeah. So what I did was top and the bottom, I gave the same 5 pixel padding. So I tried to squeeze in the item in the middle. So height of all the cell is 30 pixels, right? All the cells are 30 pixels. So 5 plus 5 was 10, and then the height of this itself was 20, but line height happened, so it doesn't work. So we need to do this adjustment, but this is not a right practice to do. I mean, the alignment should not happen with padding itself. We should have other techniques too. So that's something we'll see in the future videos. Also, the inline block and all these approaches or not the optimized approach. So we should have something like grid. And so the grid is also a CSS property. Okay, now look at this. See, we almost got it. Okay, let's see if I was just trying to give a italic font for the first row alone. It didn't work. Let's see, it could inherit that. No, it doesn't work because of the font size issue. Since there is a font size is already 0, we're not able to give a value there. But all this is aligned in center. This, and this. See, everything, this has to be aligned in center. So it's better to say, and this is on left and this on left and this in center. So 2 on center and 2 on left. So we can do a text align left so that everything is being aligned to left. The entity value last child. Why isn't that aligned to left? Oops. So I think that's a mistake. I mean, I was looking at the wrong page now. Now, I made it text aligned to left. Everything was aligned to left. So what I'm going to do is these two has to be on the left. The entity value last child and the first child, I'm going to say text align center. So these two are applied left and these two are applied on the center. But there's actually no spacing here and it tries to overlap on the line. So it's better to give a padding. So let's give a padding. 0 on the top and bottom, and left and right will give a 5 pixels padding. Just look at it. It's aligned now. Now this is becoming a beautiful website. Now we don't see, generally when people start working on HTML CSS, they will just try to do this and then here and then here, like, and then they will try to collapse the whole code. So they will try to fix it again and again. We're not doing that. We're just going to straight approach. So we completed the outside and then this part and then this part, and then on the outer side of this right part, and then the outer side of this table, and then inner to inner. So outer inner approach is what works well, and it is not chaotic at all. Now there's one more element here, which is this button. So what I'm going to do is after the list. So that is why we need this entity list panel. So entity list is basically the rows and the cells. Entity list is basically grouping that. After entity list, we need a button. So it's better to have an inner panel which encompasses both. Now this we can call add new entity panel. It's always better to have something to enclose any elements like buttons, text, all that. So if I just try to have a button here, just think of it, what will happen. Now, let's say I have a button here. Now this button and this list, they all belong to same parent. Now to the parent, I'll give text align as right. So when I do that, the button will go to the right, even the grid will go to the right. So to have different alignments, we have these parent elements. So div is pretty much used to align items. So it acts like a container, but at the same time, it acts like a container because it lets you to align items. Add new entity panel, because the button is called add new student. Then I'm going to have a button as there was in the wireframe. It's called entity action. Now I gave this a very common name because when I looked at it, these three buttons, they all had the same thing in common. There's a button green and text color was black. Now looks like they want to have a similar style to all the buttons except for inside the grid. So that's why I'm gonna give a very generic name to it. So button can be called add new student. We have this add new entity panel to align what could be there. Before that, I think this, no, I think we didn't start that here. So margin top, so which means give some space after the grid, then text align is right. See what happens. So text align is right and give some margin here, so that works. It's called entity action. And remember, we don't give any alignment to the element itself. Like if you want to align the button, you wouldn't give it to the button, you would give to the container of the button. So you don't have to worry, what if I have to align this button and that button and this button differently because this is on the right and left and right. So you have to think that all three are in three different div classes and all the div classes could be different, but the buttons appearance itself is same, right? So we should have a common class. Background color, I think. Try a green here. Text color is of course black. Font family, see that. Font size, let's try 15 pixels. Okay, this doesn't look right. I think this looks a bit bigger. The button looks a bit smaller, so I'm going to increase the height of the button. Yeah, this looks similar now. So this part is done. The whole entity list part is done. Now we'll look at the entity details part. See, we're almost done, right? 75% of the work is done. We have the entity details panel. Entity details. Let me give a border 1 pixel solid black to see the difference. See how it is different. I'll try to give some text inside it. Okay. So I think we should give some margin to it. So top and bottom margin is 300 pixels. And I'm going to make this width 95%. Remember, we also made this 95%. So I'm going to make this 95% too. And that's how it is, right? Looks like they both are of same width. Okay, so I fixed it. Now, until details panel is done. Okay, let me remove this detail and start working on the students detail. What we need here, we need a heading here. Say keep saying entity because just imagine you're going to use the same colors everything if you go to faculty, and inside faculty you might have the same layout, same colors. Why should we mention it student? Because you're going to again use it for faculty, all that. So entity is the right name. Details heading. What shall we do about this? So this is on the left side. It needs a font. It was bold, right? Okay, there was an extra tag. Let's remove that. Where did the font go? Okay, we didn't say anything. So student details is what we need here. Okay, so this border is just to see where it stands. It's all the same. I think the student details is a bit below. So the margin, I'm gonna reduce it to 250 pixels. Yeah, this is fine. Now I think I could remove this border. This is not required anymore. Okay, so let's have the next div for entering the student's detail. This is the actual table to enter details. Then we can have a row. So if you could see this is also like a table, right? One row, two columns. First see the border is working fine. Okay, let me put some height so that you could see what's going on here. Okay, so this is the height. The height is more than what we anticipated. So okay. Let's start coding our rows and then the columns. We have two columns, one that has the labels and other the values. So I'm gonna say to class entity details label, then another column that says to class entity details value. Should be right names. ID, this can be 3. So how many rows do we have? 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Okay, so ID 3, then we need name. Here we have input type text. This was city. Finally, 2 buttons, right? So could copy the same button here, put it over here, call these buttons as update and cancel. So entity details, row, label and value. See what happens. These are all green now. Now the most important thing that we gave every time we had to make this divs work as block was we gave them inline block. Before that, we'll give the border. We just gave the border to the tables, right? I mean the cells, right? So let's see what we could do with row. These row have the same issue as this one. Like, do we need to give font 0? We'll see that. Color is black. Display is inline block. This is applicable for all the labels, right? It also gives some font size, 17 pixels, and then font family. The labels are actually bold, but the values are not bold. Copy the same thing here. What can we change? The boldness alone I can change. The issues. Okay, so we need to give this as 30% and that as 70%. Yeah. The width. Let me try a width of 30% here. See, this and this has to be in one line, but I think can fix the box sizing issues. This is not solved with the box sizing. Shall I try font size is 0? Yes, that worked. Again, the height issue is there. So let me give it can be 30 pixels and line height. give it 32. Let's give the same over here. It's fine. And then let's give the padding here for the left. Same over here. Padding is fixed, but we also have this border issues now. So since there is a double border, let's look at it. The border bottom width I'm gonna remove for these labels. Same I'll also do for the value. So the border bottom is gone, but then it is gone even for this one. This is the outer border, it seems. We need to remove this. This was just to know the size of it. Removed it completely. Let's look at the padding issues here. Why it's showing without any alignment. Okay, first let's fix the border issue. So the entity details row. Last cell should have border, bottom width, border bottom, 1 pixel solid black. I think that is solved. Let's see if anything could be done here. Entity details panel is done. This is done. Why do we need this height? We don't need this height. Remove this. I mean, we generally don't give height unless you need to see this height that we gave initially for main. I'm going to remove this. What happens? This just broke, right? So the height default is still this. There seems to be some space over here. So that is okay. So when you give height, it actually takes the height of the display, the screen that you see. So it is pretty much have this height till here. So when I give height 100%, it just makes sure that the height is only till here. Okay, we have to fix a few items here. Okay, box sizing 2. Displays inline block. also gave height. Padding also we gave. See, vertical align middle could make a difference. Okay, see, it's now aligned now. Vertically it has aligned. Generally this line height and height, when you give it vertically, aligns items. But what happens is, for the text it is fine, but when when there is a text box or buttons, it will try to screw up a bit. So we'll see what we could do about that. This border is actually thick, so I'm going to just take out the border left alone with the value cells. So this is gone. So everything looks pretty nice. We're almost there. Still, we need to make a few changes. There needs to be a padding here. See? I'm gonna change this so that we can have different styles to it, or you could even use the child option. So entity details row, first, second. Okay, so second and third, what you have, right? So this is the first, this is the second. Let's try something here. This is the first sibling, second sibling, third and fourth. I'm trying to give for the second and third alone some padding. Entity details update and cancel. Need to align, right? We could even use the child option here. Need to give 30% here, 70% here for the left and right. Let's change the height alone because this seems a bit bigger. The text align is left for the update. For the cancel, it is right. Let's give some padding. Top and bottom 0.5 pixels. I think top and bottom also we can give 5 pixels. So it's aligned in center now. The only thing is it doesn't have a border left. Okay, so everything is aligned now. The only thing that is missing is, so everything is aligned now. The only thing that's missing is the text box alignment. What I could do simply here is probably could just give a margin. Or top and bottom 2 pixel, left and right 0 pixel. Okay, now it's done. So for the input I have given this. We could also have alternatives to in ways where we could actually alter the cell values and give padding over here. Okay, but for time being I would want this to happen. So if you look at this exercise, we were able to achieve everything in the outer inner approach, which is where we didn't try to mess up and try to fix anything else. So we got this whole thing here neat and nice. Now things like why we didn't do this here, all that, we have a few sessions. We'll see what properties could fix this without this margin. Now that we have completed our exercise successfully, let's focus on the advanced topics. I'll be completing that in a few days. After we complete those topics, we will try and code the same exercise but with different properties, which will make our life easier. So we will have the same page getting evolved and evolved to see, how optimized we could code.